Good morning, readers. Today's date is January 18th. Today, as a reader, I am working on seeing the big ideas in small details. Go ahead and write this in as well as the book that you are reading. This should be your historical fiction book. Readers, the last time that we met, we talked about finding passages that seem like they should be written in bold and thinking about the big idea in those passages or what the author is trying to communicate to us. We're going to continue that discussion today, but we're going to focus on small details. I am going to read a passage from the book, and it's a pretty exciting passage that we read last week. Just take a moment. You can read along with me, or you can just listen as I read it. Anne-Marie eased the bedroom door open quietly. Only a crack and peeked out. Behind her, Ellen was sitting up, her eyes wide. She could see Mama and Papa in their night clothes moving about. Mama held a lighted candle. But as Anne-Marie watched, she went to the lamp and switched it on. It was so long a time since they had dared to use the strictly rationed electricity after dark that the light in the room seemed startling to Anne-Marie, watching through the slightly opened bedroom door. She saw her mother look automatically to the blackout curtains, making certain that they were tightly drawn. Papa opened the front door to the soldiers. "This is the Johansson apartment?" A deep voice asked the question loudly in terribly accented Danish. "Our name is on the door, and I see you have a flashlight," Papa answered. "What do you want? Is something wrong? I understand. You are a friend of your neighbors, the Rosens." "Mrs. Johansson," the soldier said angrily. "Sophie Rosen is my friend, that is true," Mama said quietly. "Please, could you speak more softly? My children are asleep." "Then you will be so kind as to tell me where the Rosens are." He made no effort to lower his voice. "I assume they are home sleeping. It is 4 a.m. after all," Mama said. Anne-Marie heard the soldier stalk across the living room toward the kitchen. From her hiding place in the narrow sliver of the open doorway, she could see the heavily uniformed man, a holstered pistol at his waist, in the entrance to the kitchen, peering in toward the sink. Another German voice: "The Rosens' apartment is empty. We were wondering if they might be visiting their good friends, the Johansons." "Well," said Papa, moving slightly so that he was standing in front of Anne-Marie's bedroom door, and she could see nothing except the dark blur of his back. "As you see, you are mistaken. There is no one here but my family. You will not object if we look around." The voice was harsh, and it was not a question. "It seems as if we have no choice," Papa replied. "Please don't wake my children," Mama requested again. "There is no need to frighten the little ones." The heavy booted feet moved across the floor again into the other bedroom. A closet door opened and closed with a bang. Anne-Marie eased her bedroom door closed silently. She stumbled through the darkness to the bed. "Ellen," she whispered urgently, "take your necklace off." Ellen's hands flew to her neck. Desperately, she began trying to unhook the tiny clasp. Outside the bedroom door, the harsh voices and heavy footsteps continued. "I can't get it open," Ellen said frantically. "I never take it off. I can't even remember how to open it." Anne-Marie heard a voice just outside the door. "What is here?" "Shh," her mother replied. "My daughter's bedroom. They are sound asleep." "Hold still," Anne-Marie commanded. "This will hurt." She grabbed the little gold chain and yanked with all her strength and broke it. The door opened and light flooded into the bedroom. She crumpled it in her hand and closed her fingers tightly. Terrified, both girls looked up at the 3 Nazi officers who entered the room. One of the men aimed a flashlight around the bedroom. He went to the closet and looked inside. There, with a sweep of his gloved hand, he pushed to the floor several coats and a bathrobe that hung from the pegs on the wall. There was nothing else in the room except a chest of drawers, the blue decorated trunk in the corner, and a heap of Kirsty's dolls piled up in a small rocking chair. The flashlight beam touched each thing in turn. Angrily, the officer turned toward the bed. "Get up," he ordered. "Come out here." Trembling, the two girls rose from the bed and followed him, brushing past the two remaining officers in the doorway to the living room. Anne-Marie looked around. These three uniformed men were different from the ones in the street corners. The street soldiers were often young, sometimes ill at ease, and Anne-Marie remembered how the giraffe had, for a moment, let his harsh pose slip and had smiled at Kirsty. But these men were older, and their faces were set with anger. Her parents were standing beside each other, their faces tense, but Kirsty was nowhere in sight. Thank goodness that Kirsty slept through almost everything. If they had wakened her, she would be wailing, or worse, she would be angry and her fists would fly. "Your names?" the officer barked. "Anne-Marie Johansson, and this is my sister." "Quiet! Let her speak for herself." "Your name?" He was glaring at Ellen. Ellen swallowed. "Lise," she said, and cleared her throat. "Lise Johansson." The officer stared at them grimly. "Now," Mama had said in a strong voice, "you have seen that we are not hiding anything. May my children go back to bed." The officer ignored her. Suddenly, he grabbed a handful of Ellen's hair. Ellen winced. He laughed scornfully. "You have a blonde child sleeping in the other room, and you have this blonde daughter." He gestured toward Anne-Marie with his head. "Where did you get the dark-haired one?" He twisted the lock of Ellen's hair. "From a different father? From the milkman?" Papa stepped forward. "Don't speak to my wife in such a way." "Let go of my daughter, or I will report you for such treatment." "Or maybe you got her someplace else," the officer continued with a sneer. "From the Rosens?" For a moment no one spoke. Then Anne-Marie, watching in a panic, saw her father move swiftly to the small bookcase and take out a book. She saw that he was holding the family photograph album. Very quickly he searched through its pages, found what he was looking for, and tore out 3 pictures from separate pages. He handed them to the German officer, who released Ellen's hair. "You will see each of my daughters, each with her name written on the photograph," Papa said. Anne-Marie knew instantly which photographs he had chosen. The album had many snapshots, all the poorly focused pictures of school events and birthday parties. But it also contained portraits taken by a photographer of each girl as a tiny infant. Mama had written in her delicate handwriting the name of each baby daughter across the bottom of these photographs. She realized, too, with an icy feeling, why Papa had torn them from the book. At the bottom of each page, below the photograph itself, was written the date. And the real Lise Johansson had been born 21 years earlier. "Kirsten Elizabeth," the officer read, looking at Kirsty's baby picture. He let the photograph fall to the floor. "Anne-Marie," he repeated next, glanced at her, and dropped the second photograph. "Lise Marguerite." He read finally and stared at Ellen for a long time, unwavering for a moment. In her mind, Anne-Marie pictured the photograph that he held, the baby wide-eyed propped against a pillow, her tiny hand holding a silver teething ring, her bare feet visible below the hem of the embroidered dress, the wispy curls dark. The officer tore the photograph in half and dropped the pieces to the floor. Then he turned, the heels of his shiny boots grinding into the pictures, and left the apartment. Without a word, the other 2 officers followed. Papa stepped forward and closed the door behind him. Anne-Marie relaxed the clenched fingers of her right hand, which still clutched Ellen's necklace. She looked down and saw that she had imprinted the Star of David into her palm. Readers, that was quite a long passage, but there were some very important ideas in that passage. We said that we were going to think about some of the small details in a book. Turn and talk to your partner about the small details in this passage. Readers, when you are thinking about big ideas in a passage, use small objects, small moments, or small details to support your thinking. Thinking deeply about important passages in a book, you want to think, what is significant about this part of the story? How does this part of the story fit with an earlier part? How does it connect to what the whole story is really about? Why might the author have written this in a particular way, included these details and words? What is the character learning about life, the world, and what am I learning? Readers, let's think about whether there are small objects or details and number the stars that carry big ideas. If we find these objects that hold meaning, we can call them symbols. So I want you to think about what we just read and turn and talk to your partner about whether or not there are any small details or small objects that might hold big meaning. Readers, you may have talked about pink cupcakes with your partner, as pink cupcakes have come up a few times in the text. Or you may have come up with the Star of David necklace that Ellen was wearing. Turn and talk with your partner about what these two symbols could represent. Teachers, have students share aloud after they talk. Readers, today you will read independently. Then you will complete your packet. Make sure that that your notes have evidence. You may even choose to write about symbols in your story. Make sure that when you do that, you're thinking about what they represent and what the author is trying to communicate. You should also add to your timeline as you read. Let's make it a great reading day.